Guantanamo case continues to rock back and forth. Judge Colonel McCall, who's heading the 9/11 proceedings, has allowed for there to be a plea deal break of sorts. And Law Dragon has the article, and we'll read it together. Judge agrees to delay 9/11 guilty pleas, sets early January hearing. And remember, I just did a previous video about the plea deals that were rejected by Lloyd Austin, Secretary of Defense, and the judge McCall had overruled him. Now, the prosecutors wished for a hearing to delay the plea deals. And this case is really just bizarre because, look, we're probably never going to get a trial because the evidence is tainted. It's the confessions were forced through torture. Thank you, CIA. And it's basically, this is just, defense and prosecution basically arguing and fighting over whether there should be a trial or not. And I think the plea deals are going to be pushed through by January, and with the Trump administration incoming, there won't be a trial. And for those who want to have a trip down memory lane, 5 years ago, the 9/11 victims' families' lawyers like Creedler, and Motley Rice, and others pleaded for the Trump administration to help them get release of files regarding Saudi Arabia complicity, Saudi government complicity in the 9/11 attacks. And his attorney general at the time, Richard Barr, declined, citing that the files were national security, classified under national security. They don't care. The prosecution team in the September 11 case on Sunday won at least a temporary victory in forestalling entry of guilty pleas by the accused mastermind of the attacks, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. Remember that there used to be 5. Ramzi bin al-Shibh was deemed mentally incompetent, so there's 4. But Amr al-Baluchi, through his lawyer Alka Pradhan, are not part of this deal. So part of this deal are Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the alleged mastermind, Tawfiq bin Atash, also known as Khalad, and Mustafa al-Hawsawi, the alleged financier. By the accused mastermind of the attacks and 2 of his accused co-conspirators that were removed the death penalty as a sentence in return for a conclusion to the long-running proceeding. The judge, Air Force Colonel Matthew McCall, said it was not reasonable to indefinitely delay the pleas at the government appeals, his ruling that the plea agreements must be enforced. Now, this is the reason why I think the plea deals will go through by January, because, with the new administration, they really don't care about the proceedings or the trial itself. I mean, I know you've heard the video where Trump says he's going to release all the JFK, all the 9/11 files. He's full of shit. And, it has nothing to do with Trump being a Republican or Biden being a Democrat. This has to do with the CIA. This has to do with their interests, like Saudi Arabia. Never mind Israel. All right. I've done a whole playlist on Gerald Shea Miranda. This has nothing to do with Israeli intelligence. This is the reason why I think Israel was acting on their own with the full knowledge of Saudi Arabia and the CIA and the NSA. But what did they know? We don't. There's very few documentation of Israeli intelligence pre-9/11 knowledge. But we do know that I can make a great case that Israeli intelligence, through the art student ring and the moving front companies, that they knew an attack was coming. Now, did they know the details? I don't know. I can't go that far. And I won't, just because I find the Israeli government deplorable and morally reprehensible. I'm not going to make charges. That's not what this channel is about, never was. We stick straight to the facts and what we could do, to prosecute people. I'm only here helping the public and the victims' families as much as I can, as little as I'm doing. He ordered the defense teams and the prosecution to find available time to hold a plea deal before January 20th, the day of President Trump's inauguration, the beginning of the next scheduled session. McCall told the parties he wanted to begin hearing pleas in late December or early January, adding that he was ready to work Christmas week if necessary. Look at this. This is a headache now for these people. My wife may not be very happy with me, but I'm willing to do it, Judge said. He later set January 6th as the tentative start date for the plea hearing after receiving input from the legal teams. The unusual Sunday session followed a dizzying turn of events that began unfolding during the summer when Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin notified the court's convening authority, Susan Escalier, that he was withdrawing from the agreements that signed as the appointee on July 31st with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and the two co-defendants. As the session commenced, McCall rejected Austin's attempt, I did a video on that, withdrawal, finding that he had no valid legal basis to terminate the plea deals. In essence, he really doesn't. But yes, he is the defense secretary, but he's not directly involved in this case. Now, there are varying degrees of who's involved in this case when you deal with the United States government. That doesn't mean every facet of government. The Central Intelligence Agency, the National Security Agency, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Department of State, Department of Defense, certain areas. Not everybody is involved in the case. So McCall ruled that the agreements remained in effect and signaled in court on November 7th that at least one defendant, starting with Mohammed, could enter his plea deal during the session's third week. You know, the CIA's own Inspector General, as well as the FBI's Inspector General, did after-action reports, or they did their own investigation into the CIA and the FBI's handling of pre-intelligence to 9/11. The CIA found that there was, some fault, but not totally. But the FBI blamed their own agents for not following through. Now, what does that tell you? That the FBI looked like they seem to have shared more of the blame to the CIA. I mean, I blame a lot on the NSA CIA, but I also blame the FBI after the fact because they covered up for Saudi Arabia. And it's not through their own ordeal. It was from the Bush administration, Bush officials, people like Dick Cheney and Condoleezza Rice, Richard Clark. Call granted the government's request that the lawyers for Mohammed, Walid bin Attash, and Mustafa Hassawi urged him to stick with his plan to begin hearing pleas during the session. Friday night, the prosecution notified the parties and victim family members that planned to challenge his ruling after remaining silent on the issue during 2 days of court this week. Gary Sowards, the lead lawyer for Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, referred to Friday's notice as the second of the Friday night special deals by Austin to deprive victim family members and the American public of finality and justice. I'm torn on this. I don't know whether to, because look, like I said before, we don't have a trial. We will never know what the government had or didn't have as evidence, because whatever they had as evidence is going to be locked away, for the next 30, 40 years and released to a FOIA in the National Archives in the due date. But it's more important what they didn't have. And that's where, like myself and DJ Thermo Detonator and Project New American Century, Sean Russell, Darren Harvey, Leo Salvaggio, and Jonathan Bellasort, we're trying, we're still here, and we're trying to fill in those blanks as best as we can as investigators. And it's up to the public to basically still hold interest because, again, 9/11 changed the world, unlike any other event in history. Human event in history, anyway. Absent that attempted revocation by Austin McCall, could have heard one or more of the guilty pleas on the week of August 6th. McCall's ruling does not fall into the categories of decisions by commission judges, such as a dismissal of charges or exclusion of evidence, that are subject to interlocutory appeals. So it said that the prosecution's planned pursuit of a writ of memorandus to the appellate court did not have a likelihood of success, given that McCall had repeatedly determined in his ruling that the government's pleading had provided no authority to support its claim that Austin acted lawfully. He urged McCall to avoid the uncertainty that would accompany the change in administration and Escalier's position as convening authority that new Pentagon leadership. Sowards also referred to a provision of his client's plea agreement that removes its death penalties and possible sentence if the government were to withdraw from the deal. Even if the government prevails in its appellate challenge, so it says, They will have won the right to go back to square one and litigate this as a non-capital case. And I think some of the family members want this deal to go through, including the 9/11 for Peaceful Tomorrows, where I interviewed Elizabeth Miller, the co-chair of the group. I get their emails sometime, and I read them, and they're eager to see this plea deal go through. Whereas, like I said, I'm torn. Other family members don't want. They want the trial. So it's split. Plea agreement for al-Hawsawi contains a similar penalty provision. Matthew Engel, the lead lawyer for Benatash, told McCall, I'm going to try and get Matthew Engel and Gary Sowards on the show, the Darkened Hour, and interview them. I know that they can't talk much about the case, but I'm going to try in the future to do that this year. Next year. The lead lawyer for Benatash told McCall on Sunday that his client's agreement contains a provision that removes the death penalty in the event of a breach by the government. He said that Austin's actions have the effect of de-deathing Benatash's case as well. al-Hawsawi's lead lawyer, Walter Ruiz, told McCall that his team was adopting the totality of the arguments of his colleagues. Your Honor should stand by his ruling and move on with the due business of the court, Ruiz said. In siding with the government for the requested delay, McCall noted that he had not yet formally scheduled pleas for the week of November 18th because he and the parties have to work out a number of questions related to the scripted colloquies he must have with each defendant while hearing their pleas of guilt. The judge said that he wanted the teams to continue this preparation and would set new deadlines for those filings once the defense teams and the government agree on a week for the entry of pleas. He then canceled the session's third week. Now, what he wants the lawyers to do is basically get ready to, release their plea deals and arguments for the succession of the plea deals with the removal of the death penalty before the court, and in full opposition of the prosecution, which they're going to push back. But the prosecution really doesn't have a leg to stand on here because, for one, what are they going to use as evidence against against the defendants? There is no other evidence to show that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, Mustafa al-Hawsawi, and Wali Benatash planned or organized 9/11 for the exception of their confessions. Now, whether they, like I said, sound like a broken record here, whether they told the truth or not, we still have to give doubt because they were tortured. Now, with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, I interviewed Nick Fielding, who wrote the book Masterminds of Terror, with Yoshri Fuda, who met Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and Ramzi bin al-Shibh in a safe house in Karachi, Pakistan. Yoshri Fuda was an Al Jazeera reporter and basically interviewed Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and Ramzi bin al-Shibh in 2002 before they were captured, and they admitted to the plot. What to believe, right? Again, knowledge and belief. Knowledge is the finality. It's what empowers us to action. Belief paralyzes people. I don't want to believe they're guilty. I want to know it. So do 9/11 victims' families. So do you. Trevor told McCall on Sunday that his team would file a challenge to the Court of Military Commissions review by the end of the week. Appeals from that court are heard by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit and then the U.S. Supreme Court, which then makes its final decision. The fourth remaining defendant, Amr al-Baluchi, did not reach a plea agreement with the government, though his lawyers have said that negotiations are continuing. Please listen to the interview of Al Capretta. She was fantastic. She works as counsel for Amr al-Baluchi, and it was really an eye-opener. I'm glad I spoke with her. She's a great human rights activist as well. Also on Sunday, McCall heard testimony from the final witness in al-Baluchi's suppression case, Dr. Michael Wellner, a forensic psychiatrist testifying as a government expert. Wellner continued his testimony on Monday. On Tuesday morning, McCall told the parties that he intended to hear Mohammed's guilty plea the week of January 6th, with the plea of Benatash and al-Hawsawi possibly coming the following week. With this adjustment, the January session would now last 4 weeks, McCall said. Now, like I said, with the new administration incoming and their lack of care for the 9/11 case, and God, have you seen his appointees? A bunch of, psychopaths, nationalist psychopaths. Just, I don't know. Well, you can't win, with the Biden administration, a bunch of neocon warlocks, totalitarians, With the Trump administration, it's the complete opposite. Yeah, they're war hawks, but they're authoritarians using religion as the convening authority. And we know that they're anything but Christian, these people. It's not Trump I'm worried about. Trump is just a con man. People under him, people like J.D. Vance, McCall, Sept, Christian Nyone, the Heritage Foundation, the American Enterprise Institute. These are the people we should be concerned about because these people are overtly ultra orthodox and they believe in the end of the world. Now, I'm not going to say the Trump administration is going to end of the world, but that's for a different video. Anyway, that's all we have for now. And I may have an interview coming up with Robin Swan of the Florida Bulldog on Monday. I don't know yet. She hasn't confirmed it yet, but we're going to be interviewing her next. And I got some plans for next year, and I'll relate that to you in a future video. Listen, guys, have a great weekend, and I will see you next video. Take care, everybody.